Hey guys, and welcome to another video, another one by request. People constantly ask me, what should I do for this build? How do I fix this build? And rather than trying to do that, I'm going to explain to you how I make a build, how my whole process is, from choosing the skill to choosing what to use with it. And we're going to try to go through as much as we can here and make it as, again, as like I normally do, as comprehensive as possible. If you've already played a lot of ARPGs, some of this is probably going to be pretty duh stuff for you. But if you're new to ARPGs, or to this game in particular, some of this stuff might be really important to know. So, let's get into this thing. Okay, obviously the first thing you're going to need to do when you decide a build is going to be deciding what it is. And that's going to consist of a few things. Obviously, you're going to have the skills that you're going to be using, the gear that you're going to be using, and whatnot. There's a lot to go through. So let's start directly with the skill. Now, if you're starting a fresh character on a fresh file, your skill selection is going to be based on how far you've been into the game. Obviously, some of the things are not going to be accessible right away, whether they're purchased in a different act, or they are acquired through synthesis, or through the guild. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to get skills. Now, if I'm starting a character that I'm planning to use for the season, okay, what I do is I look at all the skills, as Statler makes my leg bleed. So I like to go to the journal and go to the item compendium, to the runes, and figure out what it is I'm going to use. So this season I went with traps, okay, because I want to learn more about the game. So, you know, that narrows it down for me. But if you're new, you don't know what's going to be good, what's going to be bad, if it works, if it doesn't. So what I like to do is say, pick your skill based on how it looks and how it sounds. Okay, I know that sounds really dumb, but you're going to have to watch and listen to this thing for hundreds, if not thousands of hours. If you absolutely hate the sound or the visual, you are going to get sick of that thing really fast, even if it's good. So what I like to do is look at the skills and see what they look like and sound like. So we're going to use what I did for traps, okay, as an example. So we're going to find the different traps, and we're going to go through them and watch them. So if you don't know about this, if you're in the compendium or if you're on any skill, this little play button here will play a sample of what the skill is going to look like. Really handy stuff. Okay, so that's a little explodey thing. Cool. What about this one? Ooh, I like that heavy thud. That was what I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And we got frost trap. Ooh, it's got some little explodey things. Now, keep in mind, you can get different cosmetics for these things, but the overall look and sound and stuff is something you're going to have to pay attention to. One of the other ways you can choose a skill instead of going through and looking at them is to start from the weapon. If you want to be a melee fighter, if you want to use range stuff, if you want to be a caster. And from that, you can eliminate a lot of things. Unfortunately, there is no good way to search through the compendium and see what is available for a staff, is available for a wand. But you can narrow some stuff down over here with projectile. We'll show you, obviously, the things that are projectiles. Or melee, we'll cut down to the melees. And this way you can go through and search. If you really have your heart set on using a big two-handed axe, you can go through and see what has axe on it. Or what has, you know, what skills are available to you that way. Again, there's no super efficient way to do this, but that is another way you can go about finding your skill. I know a lot of people, when they're new to an ARPG, the first thing I ask them is, like, have you played any other, you know, games where we use fantasy weapons? And if they do, it's like, well, I like using bows. Okay, we could start there. That's a good starting place. And you can look through again, like the you know, specific things to find bow and go, okay, here's all the bow stuff. let's look at each of those and see what they are like, and then go from there. So that's way number 2 to decide on your main skill. Okay, and the third way, there is a good way to choose what you want to use, is do you want to do, element damage? Do you want to do physical damage? That's easy. Go through, again, find fire if you're planning on using fire. It'll show you all the available fire options, and then you can choose what you think is going to maybe fit how you want to play. This is the most basic of the things, and the nice thing about this game and the way it is set up, because it is a classless system. If you start playing a mage and you use fire and you're having fun and you get to mid-mapping and realize it sucks and you don't want to do it anymore, it's easy enough to switch those skills at the alchemy table using the rune transfer to transfer your old skill onto a new skill, and then all you have to do is change your gear and you can move on. I did that this season. I started with one kind of trap. I didn't end up enjoying it in the later game, so I switched to a different one, and now I'm enjoying it much more. Using the rune transfer lets you have a lot of versatility and no fear of wasting materials upgrading something that you decide later isn't any good, and now you've wasted the materials. It's not a waste at all. You just transfer it onto a new rune and you're good to go. So that's the basics of choosing your main skill. Okay, now I'm going to pick one at random that I haven't ever played, and we're going to go through my whole process of what I would do to make that build before I start playing it. Okay, I have gone with a random skill that I've thought about before, and I've taken this skill because it's something I want to build, and this way I can show you my process, talk you through the mistakes that I make when I make builds, and show you the whole process, exactly how I would go about it. So we've gone with Deadly Poison Skewer. I like the idea that it kind of dashes to the enemy. I think that'll be kind of neat to play with, so that's what we're going to go with. Now, when you pick your skill, there's a lot of information on the skill itself, and I cannot stress this enough. Read the damn skill. My God, I don't know how many times myself or other people have been like, I don't know why this isn't working, and I look at it and it's got some line of text, like it's probably the first line of text. It'll say like, cannot crit, and they're like, I don't know why I can't do crit damage. Read the damn skill. I know nobody likes reading. I don't. But when it comes to picking a skill, you really want to take the minute that it takes to actually read the skill. So the important stuff on here, the tags are going to be very, very important to what you're going to end up using in terms of link runes and whatnot. Okay, so this is very important that you read those. Okay, very important that you read the body of the text, and this bottom line that what it requires in terms of weapon is something we need to pay attention to as well. So we've picked our skill. Let's go through the process of looking at the tags, and then the body of the text and the required weapon, and then we'll get into what we need to do to pick our link rune. Okay, let's start with tags. Tags are what you can connect to this. You got to think of it kind of like Legos, okay? These are the little nubs that you can stick stuff onto, and they've got different shapes and sizes, and they're only going to stick to the right ones. In this case, some of these tags are really, really important. In fact, most of these are really, really important. So let's go through them super quick. Attack means it's an attack. It's a thing you're hitting someone with something, and not a spell that you are casting. Now, there can be close-up melee spells, but attacks generally are melee. In this case, it is definitely melee because it also has the melee tag, which means, again, it's going to be close range. Area of effect means it's going to hit exactly like it sounds, an area of effect. Instead of just hitting one target, it will hit an area and hit things inside of there. It is a move attack, which is a pretty unique tag. Means it's going to have some special modifiers that we can put onto it. I don't actually know any of those special modifiers or anything because I've never worked with this skill, but it'll be neat to see how that works. A strike means that it physically hits a thing. It is poison, obviously. It has poison literally in the name. And shadow. Now, shadow is a new thing that will let us use the Warrior's Shadow Link rune, okay, which is going to give us the option, instead of having this connected to another spell and then using this spell to trigger that, or this attack to trigger that spell, it's going to be just this skill itself going off twice. Now, Shadow is new, it's very strong, and especially in this case, I think it's going to be really effective. If you were going to use a linked spell, I'm going to talk about that after I talk about the bulk of this, but we're going to be using Shadow for this because I think Shadow will work incredibly well with this. So there's the tags. Okay, cool. We got through that. Now, again, read the body of the text, because sometimes in here are things that you absolutely need to know before you start trying to build the skill, and people will glaze over it, myself included, and then get mad when something isn't working. So, what we need to look at here, obviously it's poison, it's got area of effect, it's got some poison damage, it's got an increased critical chance, which means we are very likely going to go critical. It doesn't have anything that stops it from doing crits. It gets a bonus critical chance. We are going to go with critical. So that's something we need to know going into the build. Got damage amplification against elites. Chance of -2 poison energy on hit at max poison energy. And at maximum poison energy, we're going to gain some stuff. Now, knowing that this benefits from poison energy is something else we need to know. If you're new to the game, don't worry, I will explain what energy is. It's basically stacks of a thing, and you're going to use those either to pay as a cost or keep them up for effect. So we know we're going to use critical, we know we're going to use energy. So that's some stuff that we can keep in mind as we decide our link runes. The other thing you absolutely need to pay attention to, and oh my god, people don't pay attention to this and then they get mad, is this little line of text at the bottom. This is the weapons that you can use with this spell. It is red right now because my character does not have a dagger on, which means I can't use this skill. You have to equip a dagger. This is also a really nice thing for new players. I generally try to recommend something that has a very narrow window, okay? In terms of what weapons you can use. There's ones that go with all weapons, right? And that's great. Except the problem is, now you have this massive selection of weapons to choose from, and no idea which ones are going to work with it best. If you pick something that has a narrow focus, dagger, staff, axe, okay, you know you're going to use that weapon, and that can help you optimize the build sooner rather than later. Okay, so we know we're using dagger, we know we're using energy, we know we're using critical, and we know what the other tags are. Let's move on to how I decide what link runes to use and how to best go about deciding what to use and how to get them. Okay, now we've got our skills. Finding out which link runes go with your skill is really easy, and people don't know about this, so I'm going to keep pointing this out. Once you have clicked your skill, there's a little icon up here. This will show you every link rune that can work with it. Sometimes there's a lot of them, sometimes there's not a lot of them, and we're going to go through quickly, and I'm going to talk about how I decide what I might need, how I decide what I definitely won't need. But let's start with... I always bring up a notepad. Okay, that's the first thing I do. And I find... so that I can keep track of what I'm definitely using, what I could potentially use. Okay, and then as you progress through the build, you can keep checking back to that sheet and going, wait a minute, I thought I should use this, and I'm not using it. Why did I think I should use that? It'll be nice later, just trust me. So we're using Deadly Poison Skewer, and we know what the tags and stuff are, and now we have a list of all the link runes that we can use. It is an attack, and no matter what, for the most part, every skill in the game is going to either have quick cast or quick attack on it. Okay, almost every. I know people are going to jump down my throat and tell me that, well, what about this skill? For the most part, you can assume that it is going to be very difficult to get maximum attack speed or maximum cast speed without either quick attack or quick cast. So we can automatically assume that at least for the time being, quick attack is going to be one of the ones we want. So we're going to put quick attack on our list here. There we go. Now, I already said we're using Warrior Shadow, okay, and I want to talk about this. Some stuff you're going to think is super good, and you totally want to use it, but you have to keep in mind how it is accessed, okay? If you look at this skill, it is yellow while in here, which means there are no gray versions, there are no blue versions. It only comes as a yellow, which means you either have to synthesize it or get it from a box, okay? Keep that in mind as you design your skills, because you might go, okay, these are the 6 ones I want to use. Great, I'm good to go. And all 6 of them are impossible to get your hands on. So if you're starting a character that's going to be starting at level 1, you have to keep that in mind as you go through. So generally I try to find the stuff that's going to work early on, the stuff that I'm going to get early in the story. And I always have 3 different blocks, or 4, I guess, 4 different blocks of the link skills that I'm going to use as I go through. The first block is the, yes, absolutely, 100% these are getting used, because I know from my own knowledge of the game. So I know that I'm going to use Quick Attack, I know I'm going to use Warrior Shadow. I spelt that wrong and I put it in capitals. Let's try that again. Why can't I type right now? Warrior Shadow, and I know I'm going to be use Grand Approach. I want to get to that, I'll explain. So those 3 I know I'm using, which means I have 3 available. Okay. Now again, we could go straight to the stuff that is going to be the end game stuff, but I like to go through and find the stuff as I progress my character, because this is a build I will likely use next season. In Season 5, this is probably going to be my build, unless something comes up. So this is kind of my own pre-planning for something. So I'm going to be looking at the stuff I can get early on. So additional poison damage is going to go into the second block, which is the block that I can access these through the story with minimal effort. Now, some of them might be things like melee damage amplification. It's blue only, which means, again, it's synth or box only. And blue aren't too bad to get, and especially because a lot of the events that come along with the seasons get you early access to these. So that's something I will put into the third box, which is the I would like to get these when I can. Okay, but right now we're going box 2, poison damage, because it's a poison skill. It's going to be a straightforward thing. We know we can use it. It'll be good. Find weakness is something that we can use early on that I think will also be good. It is definitely going to be a critical based thing. This is an easy to get critical based thing. So we're going to put that in the second one as well. Find weakness. If I learned how to type. We're going to keep going along. Now, I'm not going to go through every single skill that this could possibly use, but I am going to jump through kind of quick and point out the ones that I know I would use. Area Effect would be something I could definitely use early on. Concentrated Area Damage. Now, this is one of the ones that are sort of tricky. It's gray, but it is not a droppable one. It is not a one you can buy in the shop. It is synth only or box only. You can get them dropped as a box. A concentrated area damage, while strong, is something that I would have a little like minor trouble getting. So it's going into the third box. It is something I would like. Okay. Anything else? Melee damage amp, third box. Okay, because we know it's melee damage amplification. Now it can't apply status effect, which is going to take this. Where is it? Oh no, this isn't the same skill. Never mind. This can't apply poison effect, so we don't have to worry. So this is a good choice. I was thinking of another skill. Strike is another one I would like to get my hands on early. The problem with Strike, okay, and this is things that I like to keep in mind as I work on stuff. It has a negative effect. It has a positive effect, obviously, of doing thing, but it also is going to decrease our attack speed. Now, unless we're going to have a whole bunch of excess attack speed, this isn't something you would like in the long run, but early on, if I got Strike, it is something I would like to use. Things like Confidence is another one that has an upside and a downside. It'll give you a lot of attack speed, but it will also only be active when you are at 80% or more hit points, and you can't use Barrier with it. Now, I don't think we're going to end up using Barrier on this build anyway, so this would be one we could potentially use. I'm going to throw it in the third box here. Persistence is something that normally is really good, okay, early on in the story. Gives you a lot of strike damage, but it crit hit disabled. Since this is clearly going to be a crit thing, I'm probably just going to try to build crit right from the beginning of the game, so that's not something I would like. Regen. Early on, regen can be very strong for melee build, because it can give you a lot of health. So we're going to put that in here. It'll keep you alive early on when you don't have a lot of health options. Confidence. Deadly Poison. Damage amplification against enemies affected by venom. We don't currently cause venom. My knowledge, anyway. Unless a skill specifically says on it that it causes venom, or it causes shock or whatever, I don't necessarily think they do. Not all poison causes poison effects. Just like not all lightning causes bind, to my knowledge. Again, I could be totally wrong. Status effects is one of my weakest points of this game, and it is something I want to do a video on. If you feel you really, really know status effects well, please message me. I would love to pick your brain. Anyways. Tenacity, nah, that's not something. Now, Mana Storm is something we would definitely like long run. Again, it's one of the very strong options, so we are going to put that in the fourth set, okay, which is things that we don't know necessarily that we're going to end up with in the end, but it is something that is very strong and we'd like to get. So we're going to put Mana Storm down there. Status Effect Enhancement, Electric Shock, none of these are anything. Center of Gravity is not something we're going to be moving. That's not anything. Overpower is really strong, but we're probably going to get it from the Zodiac, so we're not worried about that. Impact, we don't really crowd control. Hunger is definitely something that you can use early on, much like regen, to keep your health up early on. So we're going to put that in the second one there. We're almost done here through the link runes, because a lot of these are just increase stuff. They're not going to help your main skill directly. Increase attack damage. Early on, this can be a very strong one. It's very early in the game. Attack. Increase. Okay. Reserve mana is something that we could use if we start to have mana trouble, but we're going to assume that we can deal with the mana elsewhere. Grip, strength. What do we got here? Damage amplification. One-handed weapon. Not bad. It's something I've never personally used. We're going to put it in the maybe pile here. Third thing. Come on. I cannot hit the right buttons to save my life today. Grip. Jesus. Strength. Opportunistic Strike is a critical thing for your first attack. Now, I feel like this could be something to mess with in this build. I don't necessarily think it's very good because it requires you to. No, that's not what I thought it was. Never mind. I completely take it back. That's not the skill I thought it was at all. Element Master is another maybe. It's not super great, but it does do one thing. It gives you poison energy effect, which is something that we are going to be using. And it gives you Element Pen, which early on can be good. It's not something that you probably want to stick with long term, but it's something, again, this is a list for yourself so that as you progress through, you can go, oh, wait, hold on. I remember I wrote that down for some reason. So Element Master. Smash, no. Damage acceleration, no. Improved technique. Killing Machine is something that can definitely be viable. Really, it's just going to help you move faster, and I got a feeling that this build will be really, really fast when it's put together, so we're going to put that as one of the possible options. Killing Machine. Extract Energy is definitely one we should be considering, because we need poison energy. Now, we might not use it on Deadly Poison Skewer itself, but putting it on this list does give you that information to think, wait a minute, that's something I put for a reason. Spirit. I've never used Fighting Spirit, but it is a melee thing. That's something we're going to put in the maybe pile here. There you go. Almost done. We're almost done, I promise. Break. Rage. Okay. That looks to be... Okay. So now we've got our list of all of our possible runes that or link runes that we'd like to use. Now, again, I know for my own purposes that these three are going to be in there. They're 100%. But we've got three, obviously, that now we can work with. These are all things that we can get fairly easily with very little effort and link in the meantime. These are ones that we should probably work with. And this one is dependent on a bunch of stuff. We don't know if it's going to be any good. It's very likely going to be in there, but we don't know. And the nice thing about having this little list is, as you play, when you run into certain issues, oh, I'm not getting enough mana, oh, I'm not getting enough health, you can go back to this list, and instead of having to scroll through that huge thing again, you've got your quick list of everything that you want to use, right? And you can go try it and just stab stuff and test it out. So what I'm going to do, okay, because I've got the skills, I'm going to throw some stuff on, and then we're going to look at the next step, which is deciding how to gear, now that you've got your basic plan for... Actually, no, never mind. We're not going to do gear yet. What am I talking about? We got to do the support stuff for this. And that's what we're going to do next. I completely jumped a step. Let's move on to now deciding what kind of support things you want with this and the mistakes you can make with that. Okay. We've got our main skill. We've got a rough idea of what we can get on it. We know we can get our regen, our health regen back very quickly. We know we're using Shadow, so we don't have to worry about linking another skill and adding more stuff. And we've got the rough idea of how it's going to play in terms of that. Now we got to figure out what stuff is going to support this really well in terms of link runes. Or not link runes, in terms of other skills. So the stuff we need to think about, okay, again, I'm going to start a new thing here, is support stuff. So we need attack enhance, defense enhance. God, I can't type. We want toggles, we want movement, and we want triggers. And those are all the possible things that we are likely going to want. So now what I do is I go look for things that could fit this skill. We're going to go start with attack enhance stuff. We're going to go to the runes. We're going to go specifically to attack enhance. Going to give us all the attack enhance stuff. And we're going to go through and see which ones I think would be the best choice. Melee damage amp, attack speed, pretty solid choice. Fighter's Wrath. So we're going to put that on the maybe list. Okay. Vital Strike is a critical thing. Now, I see a lot of people still using Vital Strike, and there's nothing wrong with it. The problem is you get to critical cap very quickly, and then this stops being as useful because you're really only getting the critical damage. And you could do a lot better than whatever percent critical damage with some amp. So this isn't something I would consider for myself. Obviously, it is a viable option, but it's not something we like. Or I like, I should say. Marksman is projectile. We aren't projectiles. Skip that one. Resource cost increase. Attack speed, damage amp. Obviously not too bad. Attack impulse is on the list. Sentry, no. Unite, no. Arc of Focus is minions, no. Release Element, we are elemental, so that does have to be considered. But, and again, I'm putting it on the considered list, it is cast speed, not attack speed, so you're probably not going to end up using this. But this is something you can think about, because when you get to a point where your attack speed is already maximized, looking at the difference in the amplification is something that you want to consider. And again, I like having these little lists of things that I considered at least, so that I can more quickly move through things. Intensify Pain is a dot thing. We're not going to be using dots to my knowledge, so that's out. Persistent Strike is critical hit disabled. We are absolutely going to be critical. Hazy Melody is minion stuff. And Absorb Energy. Now, obviously, we are going to be we're going to be using energy. So Absorb Energy at least needs to be considered. So that is something we are going to put on. Okay, so Absorb Energy. That was our attack enhance. We've got 4 choices, which is a lot of choices. Generally, it's much smaller than that. But for now, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to move on to the defense enhance. Exact same process. Find the defense enhanced stuff. Figure out what could potentially help us. Bulwark is very strong. It's resistance and stuff. That is something we will look at. I'm just going to put Bulwark. I don't want to put the whole thing because it's long. I don't know how to spell protection. Enduring Pain is a very good choice. It is melee. It does increased melee damage. It does defensive stuff. We will likely end up using it because even though it is an attack or defense enhance, it is actually also a toggle. Okay, so this is going to fall into 2 categories for Enduring Pain. Now, even though it is a defense enhance, I don't actually consider it a defense enhance. It's more just a toggle, but I am putting it in that category anyway because that's what it's under. Tenacious Regen is a really good life regen thing, but I feel like our life regen is probably going to be fine with our main attack. I'm not going to worry about Tenacious Regen. It is something that you should consider, so I'm putting it on the list, but I'm definitely putting it out of my mind. I don't feel like it's worth it in this build. You can, again, when we get to some of the other stuff, do it, but for the most part, I don't feel like this is going to be good in this build. Tenacious Regeneration. Holy crap, I can't type. Sentry, no. Veil of Protection is another one that it's a defense enhance, but it's really just a toggle. It is something we should definitely consider. because it's going to decrease projectile damage taken, and as a melee fighter, projectiles are going to be one of our most feared things. So we're going to put this on, again, both categories, because it's really just a toggle. Now, when we get to toggles, I'll talk about mana consumption, and that's something that you need to think about. Right now, we're just getting stuff on the list. Siphon Life is probably what we will go with here. We are already going to be siphoning quite a bit of life on hit, and this is probably going to be our best defense enhanced choice, in my opinion, from what very little I have looked at on this build. We are going to be siphoning life to begin with, so having more siphon life I feel like is probably our best bet. So that's my personal number one right now, but we are putting it on the list. Siphon life. Okay. Agile movement, just no. No. It's no. just hard no. Pantheon, we're not going to be a barrier user, and Hazy Melody obviously is out as well. Okay, so there we go. We've got 2 of the sections done, attack enhance and defense enhance, and now we're just going to go straight into the toggles. Okay, now there's a lot of toggles, and what we're going to be looking for is an attack seal, a defensive seal, and then anything else in terms of toggles that we could potentially want on, like Enduring Pain or Veil of Protection. Illusion Axe is something we could definitely consider. It's a great way to gain energies that aren't your main skill, and I think in this case, because we're already going to be absorbing an energy, this is something that we could make use of to use with absorb energy, or absorb energy attack enhance skill. So that's definitely a toggle that we are going to put on the list. Because we are melee, we're going to be right up and close. We're going to be using that. Blood Explosion, I know just about nothing about this skill, but I do know that people use it as melee fighters. I'm not going to bother reading through it right now. If someone could give me a really good breakdown of Blood Explosion, that would be great. But I know it's a potential thing we will be using, so I am putting it on the list. Enduring Pain, we already talked about. Seal of Condensed Destruction. Now, this is where I was talking about seals. These are things you turn on, and they just enhance your skills, and you keep them on. But what they do is they make all of your stuff cost more mana. And this is where toggles can be a real problem. People run way too many toggles, and then they have no mana, and they can't figure out why. So toggle management is very important early on. You don't want to get too much mana costs so that you can't pay for anything, but you do want to sort of keep track of all the ones that you definitely want to use. Condensed Destruction is physical. We are not physical. We're moving on. Seal of Defense is pretty strong. It's armor. We likely won't end up using it. We will probably get enough armor through other sources, but again, it is something I want to put. Seal of Defense. Seal of Crowd Control. Just no. just no. Seal of Physical Domain is much like Seal of Armor. Seal of Defense. Except it's going to do dampening. Now, this is in the long run, this is going to be good, but I'm going to put this in a separate section because it is fairly difficult to get your hands on this. It is guild only rare, so you either have to get it through the guild boxes or through guild raids. This and its partner, Seal of Elemental Domain, are both really strong, but it's unlikely you will get them for a while, so I'm going to put them in a separate section. Seal of Striking is obviously a good option as a seal attack seal. It does striking damage, which is great. Ticking? That's not I am spell striking. That's not how you spell striking either. One of these times I'll learn how to type. Probably not today, though. Illusion arrow, obviously not for us. We aren't arrow users. Poison explosion. Much like blood explosion, obviously this is something we could potentially think about using because we are going to be using poison and we're going to be using poison energy. Again, I don't know this skill very well because I haven't ever worked with poison, but I do know that this is something we can end up using, so we are putting it on the list. Illusion. Counterattack is kind of interesting and potential for us, not because of the actual counterattack, but because we can get dodge rate, and we can inflict pain when they hit us, so they take more damage after they hit us, and this is something we could potentially use. So we're going to throw counterattack on the list. Whoa, capitals, no. Oh my god, I can't type. Okay. Counterattack. Seal of accuracy. Fuck no. Seal of dodge. Very possible, because it's likely we're going to end up doing a lot of dexterity in this. But seal of dodge is definitely in there as a defensive one. No, we already put veil. Seal of chaos resist is very, very specific, that we would only really want to be using that if we had problems with a particular boss that is chaos damage. If you're fighting like Serpens or Schema or whatnot. For the most part, not something you want to worry about. Cold armor, no, we're not barrier. Thunderbolt is something we can consider because we would like to generate a lot of energy. So this is something we want to put on the list. Seal of condensed elements is element damage. Again, we are element damage. Go. Seal of element resist. Early on, this could be okay, but it's not something you want to keep on long run, so I don't even consider it. Seal of persistence is crit stop. We don't want that. And seal of pain is dot related. Okay. That's 3 of the sections done. We've got 2 more, and they're very short. The movement. What movement skills you are going to use. There's not a lot of them, and some of them you can discount immediately. We can use this because it's a dagger. Don't use leap attack. Just don't. Leap attack is... I've never seen it be really good. Obviously, there's some builds that could maybe really use it well. In this case, we're going to be diving into the enemies with our attack. This is generally for something, a melee fight, where you want to get into the enemies quickly, but our attack is already going to do that, so we're going to ignore that. It's unlikely that we're going to be using a shield. We're probably going to go double daggers, so I'm going to kick that one out. Sprint is not bad, but it shares a really long cooldown, and I don't feel like it's particularly effective at getting you around. Roll is generally my first choice when it comes to builds that I don't know what they play like yet, because it is fairly quick, it has a good cooldown, it gives you some move speed after you use it, and it gives you some dodge rate after you use it. I feel very strongly like roll is the sort of the best early on movement skill. So we're going to put it on the movement list. Why did I put the wrong thing? Roll. Illusion Strike, okay, is something I have never used, but it is a dagger-based thing. Okay, it'll let us jump into the enemies. Now, we already jump into the enemies, but this can potentially be something we could use, so we are going to put it on the list. Illusion Strike. Aerial Throw is Bowgun. Instant Acceleration is Bowgun. Penetrating Slash is another one that we can use. Now, you can use one attack movement. Okay, so like Illusion Strike is an attack movement, and Penetrating Slash is an attack movement. But they share a cooldown, but roll doesn't. So early on in the game, if you want to get through quickly you can use 2 of these at once. So I am going to put down Penetrating Slash on the list as well. Okay. Trick Shot is bow, and Teleport is poo. I know people use Teleport. I personally don't care for it. It's got a really long cooldown. It has a ramp up time and a cooldown time. So you go whoop, whoop, okay, and there's this pause at the beginning and at the end that I personally don't care for. I know some people use it. Obviously, if you like it, use it. Okay. There's the movement skill. We've only got 3 options. It's going to be easy to choose those. And the last thing is triggered abilities. Now, without knowing what is in the game, it's hard for anyone to decide what kind of triggered abilities you want. For the most part. Are there any... No, there's not really. It's going to come down to... You can link a thing to your movement skill, okay? So that you can trigger every time your movement skill goes off, you can trigger that effect and keep full uptime on it. Without knowing anything about the build, I know Shout of Provocation is probably what we're going to use. So we're going to put Shout of Provocation on there. The other thing that almost every build I've ever played uses is Shout of Justice. Set to when you get crowd controlled, it goes off and breaks you out of crowd control. It's a little 2-spot thing. You can fit it in just about every build, and it's really effective. Justice. Yeah. There's everything. So now we've got our list. Here's all the support that we could potentially use. And we will go through and narrow those down, but that's my process. Again, people ask. This is how I do all of my builds as I play through the game. Deciding what to use is a whole separate story, but we're gonna have our list, and now we're gonna look at what, in terms of gear, we're going to sort of need, so that we can plan the rest of the build and narrow down some of the link runes and narrow down some of the toggles and whatnot. So let's move on to the next section. Okay, gear. Now, when it comes to gear, you're always going to be thinking about the highest tier that you're going to be using, okay? And that changes, frequently. But right now, tier 34, and not knowing what that gear has and what it can do sort of limits your options in terms of a lot of things, of knowing exactly what you're going to end up with. But there's a lot of stuff we can narrow down. There's 3 main types of armor. Okay, there's armor, dodge, and barrier. Okay, and depending on what skills you have, depending on what you're using, you can figure out sort of roughly anyway what you're going to use as gear. Weapon is also obviously an issue. Again, if you picked a skill like I did that has a single weapon, that problem is already solved. You don't have to worry about what weapon you're using. You just have to worry about which one of the base types you're using. And for the most part, if you're going to be going crit, you're going to want the one with the highest crit. And if you're not going crit, you're going to want the one with the highest damage, basically. When it comes to your offhand, again, you almost always have the option of dual wield or shield. In this case, I believe we're going to be going dual wield, but again, we are going to think about the options of the shield. The gear, okay, once you know what your base stat is going to be, you can really, really work with what your armor, your gear pieces are going to want on them, okay? We're going to look at mine. I'm pretty confident it's a green skill rune, okay? Which means it's going to need dexterity to use, okay? And some intelligence. Which means that potentially we could go a barrier build on this. The thing that we're probably not going to end up going barrier is because we can get a lot of health regen directly from the skill, And with that, we probably won't want barrier. So that little bit of thought process there decides if we're going to go barrier or not barrier, basically. Now, when you go not barrier, you're going to always want armor, and even if you go barrier, you are going to want armor. Armor stops physical damage, and you're always going to want some of it. Even if you feel like you're going to go super high dodge rate, you're still going to want armor, because those times that you don't dodge, you're going to take these massive hits. Now, I feel like this build is going to be incredibly physical, and to my knowledge, we don't have anything yet that is going to decide if we're going to be more heavy on the dodge, or if we're going to be more heavy on the armor, or if we're going to go kind of between the two. When it comes to gear, when you're talking about, in this case, we're going to be going either armor, dodge, or armor, dodge. Now, I almost never recommend, at least currently, using pieces of armor that are armor dodge, okay, or armor barrier, or dodge barrier, as opposed to using a straight one piece. You're going to get much more of a stat from it, and when it comes right down to it, most builds benefit from having like one piece that's all armor and one piece that's all dodge, as opposed to two pieces that are both armor dodge. There are exceptions to this where certain pieces will have a good implicit value. Implicits are the pieces of gear's baked in effect. In this case, this guy has element on his amulet. This is baked into the piece. If we look at like helmet, it's got element penetration. And the times that you're going to want to take armor barrier in this case, you're going to take it because the implicit value is more valuable to you than the armor or the barrier on their own. Again, you won't know most of these until you get to the end of the game, but trying to solve some of these problems now can help you sort those problems out later. So we know we're going to be going probably armor and dodge, or some combination of. It's hard to like nail down exactly what you want in terms of gear unless you know the game really well. And since I am acting as though this is, you know, someone building a build from the ground up, all we're going to sort of narrow down is that we are probably going to go armor and dodge, okay, or some combination of, and not using barrier. Okay, we're just going to eliminate that as an option, and we're going to want poison and whatnot. There's not much more we can do without diving deeper into the build, but those are the things you need to think about, okay? Is basically what your weapon is going to be, whether it needs to be a crit base or a non-crit base with high damage. If you're going to be using a shield, if you have two-hand, or if you're using a single-handed weapon, and what your basic armor setup is going to be, okay? Because if you're going to go barrier, you need to go all in on barrier, basically. Barrier does not do well in almost all cases. I'm saying almost all because there is hybrid ones that benefit from very specific things where your barrier fails and then you gain bonuses. I haven't ever worked with one, so I can't talk to their efficacy, but for the most part, if you're going to go barrier, you're going to go all in on barrier. And I don't feel like this build, the build that I'm going to be working on, is going to benefit from that. So we're going to be going armor dodge. We're going to be using a dagger with a crit base because we know our thing is crit. And we're probably going to be going dual wield. But again, don't take that option off the table using a shield until you're sure that you don't want to use it. I'm probably, how I've decided that I'm going to be probably going dual wield as opposed to a shield is, typically I use shield because it is a very, very fast movement skill, and I can get a lot of dampening and whatnot from this. I feel like this build doesn't need the move speed because the skill itself is move speed, and I feel like we're going to gain enough other things that losing the dampening on the shield isn't a big deal, and we can survive without it. I think that's all I really wanted to talk about with armor and gear and stuff. At least the basics of deciding what you're going to be using for a build. Again, this is very loose at the beginning when I decide what I'm doing. The next thing we need to look at before we move away from gear is any uniques that we could be using and how difficult those are to get. So let's move on. Okay, uniques. Now, when it comes to uniques, some of them can be build defining, okay? And what you want to do is make sure that there's no unique that is going to specifically help this skill really reach its potential. So what we're going to do is go through all the available slots and search for, first things first, we're going to look for the name of our skill, okay? So Deadly Poison Skewer. I've already got it in. Copy and paste it because you're going to want to. You're going to have to do it a bunch of times. There are no daggers that do anything directly for Deadly Poison Skewer. So now we're going to move on. Check helmets. Nope. We're going to check shoulders. Nope. Armor. Nope. Gloves. Nope. Shoes. Nope. We are going to check shield, even though we have probably ruled it out. Okay. And the last three, belt, ring, and necklace. Okay. So now we know that there are no directly build defining pieces of unique that are for our skill. Now, there's a million ways that we could end up with one of these that could be really good, and there's no really effective way to go through these in a way that you would know if they're going to be good for your build, aside from literally just kind of going through and looking at them, looking for things. This has got poison damage, okay? We use poison, maybe this would be good, and you'd have to look at, like, okay, damage amplification against bleeding enemies and enemies affected by venom. Well, we don't know if we're going to bleed enemies yet. We don't know if we're going to be using venom. You can do a search for, like, directly just poison and see if there are any that stand out. So, poison penetration, max poison penetration. We know we are looking for poison energy, so that's something else we could search for. Since we'll use dagger as an example, I'm not going to go through all the pieces, but we'll go through. So it's got poison damage against affected by a thing, hitting enemies. Okay, we don't know if we're going to be doing venom because I don't know the skills. I don't know how venom interacts on this. The skill doesn't say anything about venom, so I'm not sure we inflict venom damage, so we're not going to worry about it. Looking at the... Now, Cause Confusion Vesper's Fang is actually a really cool thing, because you get additional poison damage on every hit. This could actually be pretty cool. It is something that we might consider. So those all say venom and stuff. Again, I don't know if we're doing venom. So what we're going to look for is poison energy. Or just energy in general. There's none that have energy. So for the most part, it looks like there's no unique daggers that are really going to fit the build. Now, I could be totally wrong. Somebody's going to pop into the comments and be like, what about this one? This is a rough outline just trying to decide if there's anything critical. Now, when it comes to going through other stuff, once you've gone through and checked for your skill name, again, you're going to want to look for, like, certain things. Okay, poison. There's only one helmet that's got poison. That's a resistance one. We'll go to shoulders. Oops. Copy that. Shoulders, anything with poison. Immune to venom, not really. Poison damage. Projectile damage, again, nothing that really stands out. Chest piece. Nope. Yeah, just poison resist, nothing there. Gloves. Poison damage, cast speed, amp, damage amplification against enemies affected by poison status effect. Again, I don't know if we cause either, blind or venom. I don't know if we cause that yet without doing anything. So this could be something we could look at, but I don't know if it's something we will look at. The attack speed amplification is a really nice thing. Look at shoes. See if there's anything with poison energy or anything that stands out. Okay, so this does have a chance to gain poison energy and stuff. It's got a move speed increase that isn't bad. Uh, you gain per poison energy stuff, so if you keep poison energy up, these boots could actually work really well. So that's something we're going to want to put on our list. I'm not actually going to write it down right now. And we're going to go through the last ones here. We'll check for poison stuff in the belts. We'll check for poison stuff in rings. That was going to jump on my lap and be real cute. Oh, such a good cat. Oh my god. Hi. Yes, hi, you're very cute. Yeah, I see you. Okay, minus poison orb. We don't use poison orb, so that one's out. So it's really just that pair of boots is something we would consider. Since we are, in fact, definitely going to be using poison energy, those boots could be something that we want to get. They're tier 33. I don't think they have any kind of special requirement on them, which is the next thing you want to check. There's no way to directly check that in-game to see if that they are hardcore only or any of those exclusive or very hard to get pieces. So it's hard to tell if this is going to be something that will be very difficult to get, but it's definitely something we should put on our list as a potential thing because, again, the movement speed is pretty good, and if we're going to be gaining movement speed per poison energy, and right now we have a max of 5, we might find ways to gain more poison energy stacks throughout the gear, but that's something that we want to look at. So that's there. That's it for the unique stuff on how I sort of make sure that there's nothing that is absolutely critical to the build. Let's move on to, I don't even know. Let's go Charmed. Okay, Charms. Now, Charm Blessings are something that is going to drastically affect your build. And now that we currently have things like this that can convert things, you can really work with these in a lot of very interesting ways. But unless you know what you were doing, it's probably best to stick to the basics. We know we are a melee build. We know we are a poison build. We have AoE. What was the other stuff? Let's make sure I get this stuff right. So we are a melee, area of effect, strike, poison, and shadow. There's nothing in blessings for shadow. There's nothing in for strike. So the 3 we can really look at are melee, area of effect, and poison. So I know that Vesper is going to be poison. Okay, so it's a blessing we will likely want because it's going to give us poison damage and poison amplification. Very good stuff. If we push it all the way to 230, we get an extra 8% poison damage on every hit. Which is not bad. It might not be worth us going for. We are going to look at that. Getting to 140 is fairly easy and straightforward, and you can get up to 4 140s if that's the way you want to go. So we know probably Vesper, so we're going to put that on our little list over here. Charms, Vesper, and we're going to put 140 question mark, okay? Because it's likely that we're going to end up going to 140. We don't know if we're going to go beyond that. The other ones we want to check were melee, okay, which is Boreal, which is great because it does melee damage and it also does armor amplification. We know that's probably something we're going to want, so we're going to put Boreal in. And again, 140 question mark, because we don't know if convert damage to main element is something we are going to want. We don't know if this 5% melee damage amp is something we should be aiming for, but it's very likely in this case that we're going to go to 190. What was the other one? Area of effect, which is Alyssa. Now, Alyssa's not going to be as effective for us because it's going to give us barrier, and we're likely not going to use barrier. Now, always put these as possible. Because we don't know for sure that this build won't do really well as a barrier build. We're just looking at it. People go into these things assuming that they're guaranteed to be this is going to be I know I'm going to do it like this. But you might get halfway through a story with your character and go, you know what? This isn't working as well as I thought. I feel like I need something different. And maybe barrier is going to come into play. The build doesn't, it doesn't have anything directly that forces it to not be barrier. So this is something we should consider at least. I am going to put it in a separate spot because I don't want it to be, it's not something we're definitely going to use, but Alyssa is something we are thinking about at least. Okay, Alyssa, and we would at least go to the 140 if we are going to use it. We could potentially go to the 190. It's got another convert damage thing, which is something we, at least have to consider. Now, the other ones is where we gotta, start looking. Hamal gives us hit point amplification, okay, which if we are going to be a life leech build is going to be really critical. So we're going to put that again in the possible stuff. Hamal, okay. Cathsor is universally solid, okay, because it gives element resist, it gives damage taken decrease, and it gives damage amp. All very solid. It is likely that if we go a 230 with Vesper and a 230 with Boreal, that we will do a 140 with Cathsor, okay, which is the most you could possibly do in terms of that. Or we could end up doing less on Cathsor, just to an 80 or something. We don't know, but again, we're just trying to get a rough outline of how we do this. So I do Cathsor, and I'll throw that in there. We're going to look through quick. I already know that there's probably nothing else. Leo is dodge rate, which again could be something we would use, but we'd be losing out because it's got projectile stuff, which wouldn't help us. We don't use projectile. So it's likely that we wouldn't use it. Spica is Sentry, completely Sentry. We wouldn't use that. Aquila is dot and stuff. We don't use dot that we know of. And I got a strong feeling that we're not going to end up going dot. You could put that on the list, but I don't think so. Sefdar is minion, Capri is fire, Maraseti is cold. It is unlikely we're going to use any of those. So now we've got a rough outline of what we would use in terms of our blessings. And obviously we should think about what we're going to try to get on our charms. We are a crit build, and it's pretty universal that crit builds want all the charms to be critical rate, critical damage, and something. For the moment, that's just our assumption. If you were going to go double damage, not double damage. If you were going to go non-crit, obviously you wouldn't want crit on there. You would want double damage chance, maximize damage, and then just straight damage maybe. There's a lot of things to consider, but we know that we're going to end up likely being a crit build because it's baked into the skill itself. So we're going to just put crit. That's all I need to know. We have our basic outline for our charms and what we are going to work with. And again, this gives us, we're not trying to make a perfect build out of the gate. We're trying to make something that we can get up on its feet and get playing and see how it goes. The next thing to go through is obviously going to be the Zodiac. And this is where a lot of movement is going to come in. But let's go look at this thing. Okay, your Zodiac. Obviously, one of the biggest choices when it comes to the Zodiac is the specialties, so that's where we're going to start. Now, I just spent 10 minutes going through and reading all of these, because frankly, I don't spend much time looking at these, because I've sort of already got my builds put together. The three that I have found that I think would work well with this build, and again, I'm going to have to make a decision at some point, but the three that I found that are possible right now, okay, is starting with Hammer. Okay, it's got area damage, which is something our tag has. Okay, it's got overpower, which is very strong no matter what. It's got uplift, which is attack speed. Okay, those are all three very good options. Our second thing in there has, again, very good options. We know we're going to be using crit, so sharpness is good. Acceleration is good for movement and attack speed. And there is this option over here to go into dot. Now, again, we don't know for sure that we are not going to end up doing a lot of work with Venom. Just because I don't know much about it, I don't know how effective it is going to be, but this does have a dot option, which is nice if we decide to go into Venom. As for the other things, again, attack critical rate, that is something we will use. Damage upon attack, obviously, is pretty good. Amplifies damage the closer you are to the enemy. We are going to be directly on top of the enemy because our attacks take us to the enemy. So this is always going to be the optimal closest range. It's got attack speed again. It's got hit point amplification, which if we go hit points, which we are planning to do, is very strong. So there's one of them. The other one is Brilliance. Pretty much every elemental build can benefit very strongly from Brilliance. It's got acceleration and overpower. It's got the option to use convert mana. I personally don't like convert mana, but it is there. We've got critical with sharpness again. We've got the dot down here again, or area damage again, which both benefit us. And then in the end, there is that's the wrong side. It's over here. It's got element damage and other stuff. Not my first choice, okay? But it is potentially an option that we could look at. It's my third one. It's not my, again, it's just something I'm considering. The other one that I'm more likely considering is Shade. It's got overpower again. It's got ambush, which is going to be critical rate stuff. It's got venom damage if we want to go into venom damage. It's something I would consider. And when I'm doing a build, I don't necessarily always think about the final, like, which one's going to be the best when I get the last thing. I'm going to think about what's going to be best as I progress through the game. And so I'm likely going to say I'm going to go with Hammer to start. You can always switch it later. And the reason I'm going to go Hammer to start is Uplift, because attack speed is going to be very important. Once this thing gets to maximum attack speed, you can start thinking about other things. And Overpower is very strong. Once we get into the second thing, we can get Acceleration, which is more attack speed, and Sharpness, which is more crit. And that's a good start. And I know that the other part, the last one, is good as well. So there's our thing. We've made our biggest decision, okay? We're going to be going into Hammer. I'm going to write that over here. Okay, bam, that's solved. As you go through the tree, obviously you're going to be looking for things that are with your tags, okay? We're going to be looking for damage upon attack to start. Again, attack speed is probably going to be a huge priority of ours until we can optimize. Let's go there, and then as you go through, you're going to be looking for, you know, if you don't know the tree well, use the search function. We're going to be using crit. Okay, so there, bam. Every time you go into a new thing, type crit and go, oh, there's crit in this one. I probably want that. And that'll give you at least rough ideas of your Zodiac, how to decide where you're going to go. There's no specific way, and I'm not going to bother going through how I would do this build, because I would do it as I progress. Every time I run into, you know, okay, I've got enough points to get into special, into the next Jesus, I can't talk. Into trait 3. Cool, let's go look at what's available on trait 3 and decide, oh, look, we got element damage. Well, we're doing element, sure, that'll be good. And I will end up changing this a lot as I progress. When I get more attack speed and I don't need as much, I can drop some attack speed for something else. Or if I feel that I'm having whatever issues. The other thing you do need to consider as you go through is when you get to Zodiac Stones, what you're going to be wanting for the implicit values and what you're going to be wanting for the other values. Now, the other values, the options, change quite drastically, but that is something you have to think about. You know, and you, when it comes to Zodiac Stones, you might have trouble getting the ones you need, but knowing that you can get, like, attack speed in 7, okay, and or whatever, I don't even know which one it is, but knowing those things can help, but it's not going to define the build, and we're just trying to get this thing together and up on its feet. So really, when it comes to the Zodiac, is just trying to figure out which special you're going to go into that is going to help you the most initially. And as you progress, you can change it around. If you don't end up liking that, maybe you don't need so much attack speed, so the uplift effect isn't as effective for you. Maybe you're going to switch to something else. But for the most part, knowing your specialty will let you go through the rest of the build effectively, and using the search function to find the things that you want, the things that are going to help, specifically. Again, and searching for the tags that are on your build is one of the best ways to find where you should be going in the Zodiac. I find one of the things when it comes to Zodiac that people make mistakes the most is taking things because they're having an issue and they don't know how to solve the issue. And one of the biggest ones is people take potion effect a lot because they're like, I'm not getting enough health, I'm not getting enough mana, and they don't know how to regulate the mana or health, so they end up taking potion stuff. And not to put down potion spots, but for the most part, any problem that you could have where you need potions to resolve it, you could solve that by building the build differently, and you'll get more out of it because then you're not relying on potions and cooldown. I think that is everything in here. I'm not even sure. I have to check my list to see what I'm working on next, but let's move to the next section. Nope, I forgot to talk about your stat point. Now, stat points are something that work drastically differently in every video game, and people will, without really thinking about it too much, will start putting points in, and then they're confused by what's happened. We know that our skill, okay, as we checked earlier, is dexterity and some int. Now, we don't know how much int we are going to need, but we know we are going to need some as it progresses. And knowing what the stats do for you is one of the bigger things to decide where your stats need to go. So, looking at the base stuff on stats, let's start with int, okay? It is mana and barrier. Now, we know we are very likely not going barrier, so that second modifier, we can just cover that up, right? That's not even there. I like that I tried to cover that up as though you could see me. Anyways, mana, obviously, is something that every build uses, but until we know how bad the mana consumption is going to be, having more mana isn't necessarily the solution. I find a lot of times people, when they say, oh, I need more mana, I'm running out of mana, that's probably not the best way to get the result you're looking for. So for the most part, we know int isn't going to be something we're going to be putting a lot of points into. We're going to be putting the minimum amount of points to make sure that we can continue to level up our skill. We do know that we need dexterity for our skill. Obviously, that's important. The hit rate is something that people really overlook in this game. So dexterity increases your hit rate and your dodge rate, and unknown that it doesn't show here, it also decreases the amount of critical damage you take from critical hits. So those are three things. We know we are going to probably want hit rate and dodge rate great, and we know we need it for the skill, so we're probably going to be putting a lot of points into dexterity. Strength is going to give us armor and hit points. Obviously, those are both things we want, so we very likely are going to be putting our points between dexterity and strength, and every time we need more int to upgrade our skill, we're going to upgrade our int. But we're going to upgrade it to the minimum level, at least currently. And what I do as I progress through with a character, and actually, over on my hardcore character, I can show you exactly what I'm talking about because I know I'm doing it right now. As you progress through the story, I always like to keep a few Zodiac points back. In fact, this case, I've got 65 Zodiac points just chilling. And I do that because sometimes I'm going to add a new skill and I'm going to want to do stuff, and this saves me having to do a reset as I progress through. People are like, well, why aren't you putting the stats in? Because they're not desperately needed right now. The build is doing fine. It's doing what I want it to do. And this way, if suddenly I need more dex to equip a piece of gear or a new skill, or I suddenly need some int, I can put them in and use that right away. It's something that I always do in video games, and it's something that I do no matter what I'm doing as I build, is I don't bother upgrading things unless I feel I need it. You're hilarious. My gear. Okay, if you look at again my hardcore character as an example, I'm using like a level 7 belt because I don't desperately need anything. People spend a lot of time in town working on gear as they progress through the story, and it's a real waste of time. I know that I could very likely get a drop that is drastically better than this belt without having to do any upgrading. Unless the build is failing critically in some way, if you are moving through enemies at the level that you're working on, whether it's moving through the story or moving through maps, don't bother wasting materials upgrading. Okay? Just continue with what you've got. So keep some Zodiac points back is sort of the tip. Zodiac stat points. I always like to keep a few back, and only really put them in when I either need to upgrade a piece of gear or I need to upgrade a skill and it requires that. Otherwise, I just kind of leave it because this is the best way to find where the weaknesses lie in a build, is to starve it of those resources. They talk about you'll never know your limit until you hit it, right? You'll never know what your maximum is until you can't do anymore. And it's a little more dangerous, obviously, in hardcore to try and do it this way, but I still do. I'm not gonna keep putting points into strength, right? Oh, my armor's good. Oh, I need armor. But if I find out later that maybe armor isn't the best way, this is the best way to know what is failing in the build. If suddenly I'm having mana trouble, okay, is it that I don't have enough int, or is it that I'm spending too much mana, or that my mana cost is too high? There's a lot of things, and stats are sort of the best way to find where the failure lies in a build. At least in my opinion. Okay, we're done stats. Let's move on. Okay, let's talk quickly about... we're going back to the rune. I know it seems weird, but one of the things that especially beginner players in this game do, even if you've played a lot of other ARPGs, you make the mistake of cluttering your rune board. You can see that my hardcore character, again, I'm not particularly far into the game yet. I'm only in Act 8. But my rune board is very sparse. And it's sparse for a reason. Because I need to know what is working and isn't working. And the more stuff you add, the more cluttered it gets. And some of the stuff can get lost. You'll end up with things that aren't really doing you any favors. Or things that are doing you a lot of good, but they're not getting enough attention. So I always do very, very minimal stuff with my build. I always have my list of my skills. So you've got your main skill. Okay, I've got my move skill. I've got toggle. Okay, I've got another toggle up here. I can move that down there just so they're together. I've got my attack enhance, and when I get a defense enhance, I will have that as well. I've got a shout, which I can use along with the attack enhance on bosses, but I don't have a lot of stuff. People try to, I gotta get more stuff in here, I gotta fill it up, and especially with beginner players, using Oliver, the 10-year-old who lives here, using him as an example, every time he gets a new skill, he wants to put it in and try it. Oh, it's a cold skill. I'm cold, so I'm gonna put it in my thing. And you end up with a whole bunch of disjointed things. Trying to slim it down. I know it's not necessarily as fun, just having the one skill and you kind of run around and attack things. You want to be hitting all kinds of buttons. But it's going to muddle the build. It's going to... Too many cooks spoil the broth kind of situation. It is so much better to stay with the minimum amount of stuff, And every time you introduce something, really see if it is a boon to the build, or a buff to the build, or a boon to the build. You don't want it to be so I could put Illusion Axe in here. Do I need Illusion Axe for anything in particular right this minute? Is it going to do anything other than, oh, it'll do some more damage? Is your damage that bad that you need it? Really think about what you're putting into the rune board, and don't just throw things in because, oh, I got a free link. I could put something here. I should put something on that. Really think about what it's going to do for you overall, because I see a lot of times people talking about they're having mana trouble, but they've just got 5 different things linked to stuff, and I'm like, Winding Wind is one of the things I see. People have Winding Wind because they had it, it could link to it, they put it on there, but I'm like, do you even know what that does? It's increasing the cost of your skill, but you don't even know what it's doing for the skill. So trying to not just throw everything on your bar because you can. I frequently, on my main, people will notice that I have a free space on my first bar here, and the same with this character. They're like, oh, why don't you have something in there? Do I need something in there? Is there something that the build can't live without? Because otherwise, why do you have it there? People end up with these insanely high mana costs because they've got 7 different toggles on. Oh, I got cold armor on. Well, but you don't run barrier. Oh, but I like that it chills the guys. There's other ways to chill people. There's better ways to chill people. My mana cost is, 1.1 right now, which is fine for where I am. When I put my stuff on, it goes up to 1.49, which is fairly high. That's something I need to keep in my back of my head as I'm going. And again, Illusion Axe. Why don't you have Illusion Axe on there? It would fit perfectly. It's physical, it's area of effect, it's everything would work. But do I need it? Do I desperately need it for anything? Or am I putting it in there because I just got to get everything I can? Don't overcomplicate your build. Keep it simple. Okay, the more straightforward it is, the easier it's going to be to add things in later, because as you add stuff in, you'll be able to see immediately if it makes a difference, rather than if you got 27 different things going on, and it's just kind of getting lost. So try to not just fill up your rune board for the sake of filling up your rune board, and keep in mind, and I always talk about this, the more links you have on a skill, the higher the mana cost is going to be. If you are having mana trouble, maybe you have too many links. Maybe take one off. Or stop leveling up the skill itself, because when I level this skill up, the mana cost will go up. Back to town here. If I level up my main skill, the mana cost will go up, the damage and stuff will go up. But if instead I level up the link runes connected to it, you can see the mana cost goes up every time I level this up. But if I level up the things connected to it, it doesn't increase the cost, it just increases the effect. Things you got to keep in mind as you are moving through the game. And mana cost is one of the biggest ones. I am working currently on a revised mana cost video, but I do have one on the thing if you're having mana trouble early on. So that's that section. Just don't overcomplicate the build early on. Stick with the bare minimum, and don't have 27 different skills. If a skill is not absolutely critical to the build right now, don't bother putting it in. Okay, that's my advice for the skill section. Okay, let's move on. Okay, let's talk about achievements. Let's talk about collections. Let's talk about mastery. When it comes to a build, these can make massive differences to your overall build, and they're things that seem to get overlooked quite a bit. With your item compendium, the unique compendium and the rune compendium don't do anything directly for your character. They just affect drop rates and stuff, and they're great to have when if you can get them, but they're not going to affect your character. Rune growth, rune slot, and rune grade all directly affect your character. Rune growth, if you are just starting out, and you'll hear me say this a million times, ignore this. Just pretend it doesn't exist, okay? It's requires you to have a level 45 rune in your compendium, okay, to get some hit points. If you're just starting out, you are not going to be, you should not be focused on getting these, because that means that your entire rune board is full and everything's already level 45. That's what it means to me to start putting stuff in here. Ignore this for now. Rune slot is something that can directly affect your character, giving you stats, and it's fairly easy to get. Once you have got your rough rune board put together, you should be trying to get every 6 slotted rune you can and stuffing it in your collection. The first 10 are easy peasy, okay? Every time you get one for the first 4, it's going to give you stats. The next one's going to give you recovery potion effect. 4, and then recovery potion effect. After that, it's every 2. But this is quite a few stats, because it's not 2 stats, it's 2 to all of them. It's 6 total stats. Those 6 stats can make a big difference, especially every time you get them. And certain things are going to require stats. Different bonuses are going to require you to have 500 strength or 300 int or whatever. So these can be really good. Rune grade later on is going to be something that you want to get. Once you've legendaried every rune in your rune board, you should start using those legendary rune upgrade things to get these bonuses. It's straight damage. It's really easy to get once you're in sort of the mid-end game. You should definitely be working on those. The mastery is something that you should definitely work on. I just did a video on how to level everything, and I'm not going to bother going through it in here, but you should look that video up if you don't know anything about the masteries. Masteries can hugely affect your build, especially if you're doing something like crit. Getting this gear critical rate can be one of the biggest early on helps to getting your critical rate up as high as you need. You can get a lot of damage amplification. You can get where is it? Element penetration in here. You can get damage taken dampening. You can get barrier amplification if you're a barrier build, which is one of the few places you can still get barrier amplification. There's hit point amplification in here, which could be huge if you are a life leeching build, because the more life you have, the more you're going to gain each hit, which is good. The accessories let you access things like maximum element penetration, which is very hard to get any amount of. There's stats in here. There's movement speed. There's, in the armor one, there's element resist if you're having element resist problems. Your mastery is very, very strong for enchant mastery. Your alchemy mastery is going to directly affect your potions. And I know I talked about in the Zodiac thing how potions aren't something you should focus on, but these are going to give you points into your potions that can't serve any other real purpose in terms of making your character stronger. When you look in here, all the stuff down the right side is going to be stuff that's going to affect your alchemy table. Okay, these 2 rows are going to be your health and mana pot stuff. All very good stuff, especially if you're going to be using them. As a barrier user, I don't have any points in the health pot stuff, but if you're using health, you should be using these points. Off to the side are enhanced potion stuff, which is really strong once you can sustain using enhanced potions. Early on as a character, you probably shouldn't try to use them because you're going to run out of resources very quickly. But once you can, these are actually really strong. Getting the enhanced potion effect on the attack damage potion and the high attack damage potion, those are both very strong. The other thing is achievements, and I talked again in the level everything video. Getting achievements, especially some of the really strong ones, gives you titles, and those titles give you stats. They give you a collective stat, so it's not just the one you have equipped. And you look through, there's some really strong things in here. There's a lot of damage, there's a lot of stats, there's a lot of hit rate and crit rate. And it's something you should definitely try to get as quickly as you can. Some of them are easy to force to complete, like the Get 50 Friends one. Literally just friend everybody until you get it, and then you can just unfriend them all afterward. Those kind of things are super important, and you should definitely look at them. The last thing I want to talk about here is orbs. As you gain orbs, obviously, it's going to relieve pressure on other things, especially when you talk about the resistance ones. Getting to, 50 or 70 of all the resistance orbs doesn't take much time, and if you have rubies, you can buy them for absolutely nothing on the auction house if you want to speed the process up. Thinking that you can get, 50 to 70 fairly easy. Once you get above 70, it gets hard. But getting up to about 70 is no problem very, very quickly with orbs. And that's 70 resist. And when you only need 150 to be at the soft cap, it's something that you get early on, and it'll take so much pressure off of your gear that you can put other things that you want. So trying to get those orbs is good. Again, the stat stuff, the strength, dex, and int, same issue. Getting enough of those can take pressure off of having to get it elsewhere. Life and mana, obviously. Hit armor and dodge, same thing. All of these are free things that you don't have to worry about so much on your gear, and once you start to get a lot of orbs, you can really, really optimize your build. I think that's everything here. We're gonna take a super quick look at Lacrima next. Let's move on. Okay, your Lacrima is something that you should consider when you're doing your build, especially if you have a build where you can get a unique that is really good for your build, but doesn't have the stats that you really want, and is something you're going to put in your Lacrima. Getting a legendary Lacrima is a nightmare if you are not buying them on the auction house. I don't use the auction house for anything. I still don't have a legendary Lacrima that I like. I've only collected 5 in all the time I've been playing, and none of them seem to work. So with that, knowing that you can get legendary ones depending on how you play, if you're just going to buy them on the auction house or whatever, can make a big difference in what you're going to put in your Lacrima. If you cannot either afford to buy one from another player or won't buy one from another player, the best way to use your Lacrima is as a way to fill in gaps in the build. Instead of looking for the best gear, look at what your build needs the most and put that kind of thing in your Lacrima as a piece of gear. Obviously, your blessings are going to have a direct effect on this, but because we already know that we are looking for the blessings that we are because of my list here, we know that we're going to need whatever Lacrima, and then we can start looking for ones that are going to fit the bill that we can get some stuff in. And what I generally do, like in this case, I needed, when I put this Lacrima in, I really needed more cast speed. I was really low. I got some cast speed amp. I got some other good things on there, but I'm really just using it to fill in some gaps. I wanted some skill rune cooldown recovery speed. I put in the necklace so I could get some skill rune cooldown recovery speed. Your Lacrima, unless you're going to be using, again, legendary ones and using super hyper focus stuff, is really just a great way to take pressure off of your main gear. And since you can put in stuff with very little crafting cost, you can put stuff in and change it as you need other things. Oh, I'm having some huge mana trouble. Maybe you should throw in a belt with reduced mana cost and fix it that way. Rather than having to worry about changing your main gear, your Lacrima can fill in a lot of gaps very easily. And I think that's something that you should keep in mind as you're making a build. Rather than trying to use this to make optimal stuff, use it to fill in gaps until you can fill them in with better gear in the long run. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the soft and hard caps in the build. and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay. Knowing what the soft and hard caps are on certain things can have a drastic effect on how you build your build. I'll use sentries as an example. When I started playing sentries, I thought, get as many sentries as you can. I went out of my way to make a setup so that I could get 6 sentries. Now, currently with the 1 unique, you can actually get more, but there is a hard cap, okay, that is now, I guess, a soft cap on how many sentries you can get. You can only have 5. No matter how many things you get on your gear or whatever that let you have more, you can't go above 5, except for that 1 unique. Maybe that was a bad example. Either way, there are limits on things, and for the most part, as you're trying to use your build, you should be trying to get to those limits. And you got to do sort of Price is Right rules. You want as much as you can without going over. If you are at a cap, okay, and it's a soft or a hard cap, and you have stats over that, you're wasting those stats. They're not doing anything for you. So knowing what you can get to for certain things can really help. So one of the first cap that you should be aiming for is cast speed or attack speed, depending on your skill. Getting it to 5.0 means you're going to be getting the maximum amount of your attack or spell out every second, which is the best case scenario. Once you hit 5, you know you can stop getting more of it, and if you happen to upgrade a piece of gear and you had a tier 7 cast speed and now you have a tier 11 and it's that much more cast speed, you know you could take cast speed away from somewhere else to put that in. So knowing that the 5.0 cast speed cap is there, and as far as I know, that is a hard cap. You cannot go above that in any possible way in the game currently. Your penetration has a soft cap of 60. You can increase that. As you can see here, I've got 65%, and I'm actually planning to go to 70% later today when I do some work. That's something that you should keep in mind. You want to get to that cap without any excess. If you look at my attack stats thing, you will see that I'm actually at 68.9 of 65, which is why I plan to go to 70 now, because I can get to that 70 cap. If I was at 65, or if I had something that could increase my cap to 65, but my penetration was only 40, there's no point in getting that. You gotta, that's a waste of a point. And in the Zodiac, I see a lot of people trying to get to things like, where is it? Here? Yes, here. The max lightning penetration. They try to get to this, but their penetration's only 40%. This is, yes, it's going to give you the lightning penetration, but if you're not at that cap, this is sort of a wasted point. The other stuff that you should know about are obviously the element resist soft cap of 75%, chaos resist soft cap of 75%, armor can go up to, I don't even know what the percent is. There's a lot of caps to be aware of. Oh, there it is, right there. Armor can go up to 75%, okay? Which I assumed. I don't know why I didn't think. Your dampening can go up to 75%. Your dodge rate can go up to 75%. Again, a lot of these are soft capped, though, which means there's ways to push it above. Critical rate is sort of screwy right now, in that it used to be you had your crit rate, okay, so spell critical rate, and it would show you. Why is it not showing? Got the wrong thing. There it is. Spell critical rate. So this number is more important than the percentage because it's based on enemies. And it used to be like, you need 760, or whatever the number was, 730, 700, whatever it was at the time. And you knew you needed that to cap your crit, so you're hitting 100% crit. But now, because of the elaborate attack, you don't actually need a flat number, you just need to get to 100%, and you can definitely do that. So knowing that the crit damage cap is 1300%, there's nowhere in the game that these are really listed. A lot of those I just showed, actually, the way you can see the values. If you turn show maximum, it will show you the absolute maximums of everything. But again, these are soft capped in most case, and there's a lot of stuff that you can change. Knowing that your max trap install count is 15, that is a hard cap. You can't go above that. Your earth energy is maximum of 10. You can't go above that. There's a lot of those kinds of things, and knowing what they are when you start building can help you from wasting stats. Again, there's not in a lot of the stuff, there's not a really good way to check in game what some of the rates are and how far you can take them cap wise. But that is something, if you can try to pay attention to those things, that's something that's really important, is knowing what the caps are, so that you're not, oh, I need more cast speed, I need more cast speed, and you're way over the 5.0 cap. I wish I could sit down and have a list of all of them and know, here's the soft cap, here's the maximum hard cap and stuff, but it would take me forever to figure everything out, and by the time I got it all down somewhere, the new season would roll over and everything would change. Just try to be aware of the caps on certain things as you consider your build, because some builds, like in terms of attack or spell, the skill itself will have a massive increase to attack speed, and I see people with link runes that give them more cast speed. I'm like, you don't need that, you're way over the cast speed cap, and you could put something else in that place. So try to think about that as you work on your build. I'm not sure what else we got, but let's move on. Okay, let's talk quick about jewels. Jewels are obviously newly introduced to the game, and jewels are very good at, much like the orbs, they're good at plugging gaps in the build. One of the early on things, especially, you can do, that I do it on my hardcore character right now, if you're having mana trouble, you can get a blue jewel, throw some mana cost reduction on it, throw it on a piece of gear, and let it fill in a gap. And early on, that's what you should be doing when it comes to jewels. You shouldn't be just trying to get more damage. I know it's really tempting to just get more damage, but instead of using those slots to get more damage, make sure you're using them to fill in the other stuff that you, so like your resistances, that you can get to that soft cap of 75%, that you're making sure your mana is under control by using the blue jewels, trying to get to maybe your crit cap, so that you can, do more criticals. I know that's a damage one, but that's trying to use it utilitarian rather than just taking flat damage, just going for like a strike damage. Jewels can be really effective that way, and obviously you should be looking at your current jewel score, and if you are close to a threshold, maybe instead of putting a lower jewel to get flat damage, maybe you should put a higher jewel just so you can move up to the next thing in here. Like if you're at, say, 194 points, if your green jewel isn't going to push you over that 200, maybe it's worth putting a white one with a less optimal thing to try and get to this, because that's going to give you more in the long run. I see a lot of people just kind of throwing jewels in without really thinking about it. And as you progress through the story, obviously, use them however you want. But once you start to get towards the end and you really want to start to make the build come together, you should use those to fill in gaps more than just go for more damage. At least that's how I look at it, and that's what I've been doing with mine. Yeah, so there's jewels. Let's move on. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. So now you've got your rough outline of the build, and you're going to go out, try this thing, and see how it does. Again, depending whether you're starting a fresh file or a new character or a new season, or you are just building a character as you've already got a max level character and you're just throwing stuff in to try something, is obviously going to depend heavily on what's going on. But now that you're ready to get out there and try it and see what you can do, it's important to remember that all that pre-work stuff that you did is really going to help. Keeping in mind, your this is the thing I want to try to get, so you can try to focus on getting that thing, or knowing the weaknesses of a build because you've looked at, like, okay, I know I'm gonna have trouble getting attack speed because I'm using a slow weapon, or I know I'm gonna have trouble getting crit rate, or whatever the thing is. If I'm doing double daggers instead of a shield, I'm gonna have more trouble with defense. And once you've done this chunk of the work, okay, on a build, and you've got all your stuff, it's so much easier to now go back and, as you play, decide things and make decisions on, I've got a box, what should I take, what's the important thing out of it, what's the best link rune, skill rune that I'm going to get out of this that's going to help the build. Don't just, I gotta get more damage, I gotta get more hit points, because then you fall into a trap of just looking at one number. And people say, when it comes to builds, a lot of the time I get either, my damage is really low, or my hit points are really low, I'm dying a lot, but they're not really looking at what's killing them, okay, in terms of when the damage numbers come up when you die. People don't even look at those. You got killed because of physical. Well, maybe you should look into more armor, some more dampening. You died to poison damage. Was it a poison hit, or was it a poison, like you died to poison? Maybe you should get some dot resistance. Maybe you should get some immunity to that if you can. Those are the things you should keep in mind as you now play this build. And again, this process I went through is exactly what I did for my seasonal character, and as I progress through my seasonal character and my new hardcore character, I have done the same on the side here. I've got the same lists, the same thing. This is my whole process. Yes, there is a lot of issue if you don't know the game. You're going to have a lot of things that you're going to make mistakes, and that's going to happen, and don't feel bad. Everybody makes mistakes. I do all the time, which is why these are for dummies videos. I hope this helps. I really do. I know building a build is hard, and if you pick the wrong build and it doesn't work right, it can be really demoralizing. But I'm always here. I'm always here, guys. Ask me questions. Pop onto my stream, ask me questions about your build. I will gladly look over a build and give you ideas on how to fix things. If I missed something in this video about how I go through my process that you feel you want more information on, let me know. I'll let you know. That's it for the guide. It did end up being quite a bit longer than I expected, but that's pretty much all of my videos. I hope it helps. I hope you enjoy the game, and I will see you out there.